doubt. And Jesus starts asking some questions. And I think I kind of interpret those questions as, what's your story? Right? What's going on in your life right now? Right? And so they respond to Jesus and they say, don't you know what's going on? Everybody knows what's going on, right? Everybody knows what the big story is right now. And Jesus is like, no, tell me what's the story. And the disciples, they don't actually start telling Jesus their story, right? The disciples actually start telling Jesus his story, right? It's kind of interesting that Jesus asks one question and we get a different answer, right? And so they're telling Jesus all this stuff that's going on, and they still don't recognize Jesus, right? And then Jesus goes, you fools! That's not the story. I don't know what story you guys are talking about, but let me tell you a different story, right? So Jesus starts telling them all his story, right? He says, we got to go back to the beginning, because clearly my 3 years of life was not, you guys didn't get the story. So let's start from the beginning. He goes through Moses, and he goes through Abraham, and all those good stories, right? And he keeps telling them, and they're walking, and then it says it's getting dark out. And I think that's kind of a key point, because they say, hey, it's getting dark out, come join us, right? Because Jesus at this point is going to continue walking along, and they're like, no, like come share a meal with us, and stay with us, because it's dark, and back in those times you didn't want to be out walking around, right? It was probably dangerous. Robbers come to mind, right? So they sit down and they're sharing their story, and it gets to the point that Jesus goes and he takes the bread and he says, I take this bread and I break it. And it was the one common experience that they recognized. Right? It was the one part in the story that they go, wait, I know who you are. Right? It's that one part in the story where we all recognize deeply. And then what happens? He's gone. Is that what you would expect? Maybe the better question is that what you want? If I was those disciples, I know what I would do. I'd be like, whoa, wait, come back! This isn't fair! You're playing a trick! Right? And all of a sudden, the story that they thought was over and done, they realized it was just another chapter. And in some ways, it was just beginning. And their story and his story were now one, right? And even our story, for all of the people, take a second and turn around and just look at all the people here, right? All of these people have a story. All of these people have a story that God's working through. Okay, so they've been on this walk, right? They're walking and they say, okay, let's have a meal. Now, guys, how many times have you been on a road trip and you get more than halfway to your destination and you have to turn around? How about you get all the way to your destination and you forgot something, right? I know there's been times I've been on a road trip and I'm like, oh, we forgot Eric's medicine. And so instead of driving all the way home, I'm calling like, okay, can we get this medicine? I don't want to drive 3 hours back to Austin, right? We were going to Houston. How do I make that not happen, right? Well, what did these disciples do? They went back to Jerusalem, right? And it was so important. It wasn't it's dark, let's wait till tomorrow, or let's wait till next week. It was, we got to go now. Right? That's how important it was. Screw that it's dark. I don't care about my fare. Right? How many of us do that when we're afraid and scared? Right? Do we actually say, to the wind, and off we go? Maybe the first thing we do is make a pros and cons list. No, they have to go right then and there. They've got to go right then and there and tell the good news about Jesus is alive. And he's impacted my story. And I want to share that with all the believers. And maybe I want to share that beyond the believers and share that with the world. This is when I just realized I totally forgot a big part at the beginning. And Christy's like, oh. So we'll just bring it in here. Why not? All right. So think of your favorite story. Think of your favorite Bible story. Maybe it's the walk to Emmaus because that's the one we just heard. How is God using that story in your life to share his story with the world and to share his story with the community of grace? I think the other thing I want to mention, because I'm up here, there's a lot of tension. And it's okay to have tension. Sometimes tension makes us walk to Emmaus. But maybe after we share a meal together and we embrace that tension, it gives us that opportunity to come back and to talk. And to really share that we are a community that deeply cares about one another, above and beyond all else, even past our fear.